Chapter 11:23. After the expedition. Above the gray fog, when he saw that the City of Silver's exploration team had begun embarking on their way back as the Giant King's palace remained unchanged, Klein heaved a sigh of relief and leaned back in his chair, exhausted. After 2 hours of observation, his spirituality was nearing its limits. At most, he could hold out for another 15 minutes. Regardless, the things obtained from this expedition completely exceeded my imagination. It's only right to give the Silver Night Potion formula to the City of Silver. As he rubbed his forehead, his thoughts began to wander. Being aware of these ancient secrets is very helpful to my digestion after my advancement. The problem now is that my Bizarro Sorcerer Potion hasn't been fully digested. From the feedback I've been getting over this period of time, it can be seen that all sorts of strange tales are indeed useful. When Miss Magician completes the script and publishes it, it just needs some time to build up some momentum before it's done. However, she started writing a few days ago. I don't know when she will finish her manuscript. Why can't she just write a few more hours every day? When I went to pick her up this time, I should urge her. With this in mind, Klein suddenly recalled something. He hadn't given Anderson a reward for finding Vice Admiral Ailment. I'll wait until he helps Stanitz become a conspirer. Anyway, this was also part of the agreement. The advancement ritual of an iron-blooded knight isn't difficult, but it's not simple either. Especially for a hunter, it's even more troublesome. It requires a hunter who is adept at provocation and enjoys coming up with ploys to build a team of at least 30 people, and also nurture a deep sense of friendship amongst them while making them strong. When they act almost as one, they'll set up the ritual. The greater the strength and camaraderie amongst the team, the better the effects of the ritual. Seeing that the City of Silver's expedition team was returning in an orderly manner without encountering any accidents, he finally felt at ease. He left the world above the gray fog and threw himself into bed, falling into a dream. After some rest at the afternoon town camp, Derek Berg finally recovered, and his face was no longer as pale. He had just eaten bread made from black-faced grass powder when a figure grew out from the shadows outside and said in a low voice, "Derek, the chief is looking for you." Yes, Derek subconsciously stood up. Thank you. He was originally prepared to find the chief and hand over the Silver Night Potion formula. After watching the messenger retreat into the shadows, he walked out of the room and arrived at the clearing where the bonfire was illuminated. At a glance, Derek saw many members who hadn't participated in the expedition gathered in groups of 2 or 3. They were excitedly discussing something. They already knew that one could see the sea from the Giant King's court. They knew that it wasn't too far from the coast, and as long as they found the correct path, they would arrive there in no time. This was an important step for the City of Silver to save themselves after discovering the outsider, Jack. The residents of the City of Silver, who mainly had the power of dawn, finally saw the light of dawn. Their long wait and persistence seemed to have paid off. Derek could understand the feelings of his team members because he was the same. However, from the world Jayaman Sparrow, he knew very well that the waters in the ruins of the Battle of Gods weren't that simple. To head to the other side of the sea would probably be extremely difficult. Ignoring everything else, just Dark Angel Sasrier, who was sleeping in the Giant King's palace and blocking the vital path outside, was a problem that he couldn't overcome at the moment. I can only hope that Mr. Fool will bless me. Yes, for that boy to appear in the temple ruins, it means that there are other paths that can bypass the Giant King's palace and reach the sea. Derek thought optimistically as he circled around the quietly burning bonfire and walked towards the chief's room on the other side. Suddenly, he saw a person sitting silently in the shadow of a boulder. It was a man in his 20s, and he was much taller than Derek. He held a pale gold bracelet with 3 small bells hanging on it as he looked at it with his pupils unfocused. Derek was no stranger to this man. He knew that he was the husband of Antiona, Dolors, a Sequence 6 Dawn Paladin. In the City of Silver, before the age of 18, one could date freely until they were married. And if one didn't have a partner at the age of 18, they would be arranged to have one. It was the same for widows and widowers after 3 years. This was a necessary measure to ensure the necessary population level for the City of Silver's continuation. It seemed like it was against human rights, but for the continuation of the entire city in the Darklands, it could only be done this way. Furthermore, this could ensure that everyone had a certain number of close relatives, preventing the possibility of mutating into a terrifying evil spirit after their death. As for Dolores and Antiona, they were neighbors who lived on the same street. They had known each other since they were young and had a good impression of each other. In the end, they started dating when they were teammates of a patrol team. Over time, they became husband and wife and had a deep, loving relationship. In light of how they had a young child, Colin Iliad had deliberately left one of them behind during the expedition to the Giant King's court. On the one hand, Derek felt that there was nothing wrong with the chief's arrangement, and on the other hand, he felt a strong sense of sorrow because of the way Dolores acted. It was as if he had returned to the state when he had to personally stab his parents to death. From the beginning to the end of the expedition, it only took half a day's time. However, to Dolores, it meant everything had changed. After a moment of silence, Derek retracted his gaze and continued forward, subconsciously taking a few heavy steps. At the same time, he thought of a rumor. Shepherd Elder Lovia once had a husband, but he died in an expedition. This was very common to begin with and wasn't worth discussing. However, other than Lovia, the team that explored the ruins of the temple had all gone mad. After they were eradicated, there were rumors that gradually spread among the residents of the City of Silver. During that expedition, Elder Lovia had eaten her husband. In the night with low lightning frequency, the winds were rather cold. Derek shivered and turned his attention back to the scene before him. He took a few steps and arrived at his destination. He raised his hand and knocked on the chief's door. "Come in," Colin Iliad said calmly. Derek pushed open the door and entered. He saw the chief wearing a linen shirt and dark-colored coat, wiping his two swords with oil. Colin Iliad didn't stop. He raised his head and looked at Derek. "What are your thoughts on this expedition?" What's the chief's motive for asking this? Having been influenced by Alger, Derek subconsciously had this thought. Unable to grasp the true intentions of the chief, he had no choice but to close the door and answer frankly, "There might be other paths to the seaside. The palace of the Giant King should be very important, but that's too dangerous. We need more information." Colin Iliad nodded and asked, "The kings of angels and other existences who call themselves deities secretly plotted together because they wanted to resist the Lord. And their success caused this land to be forsaken." Although Derek had never directly heard of such an inference, it wasn't difficult to come up with a similar conclusion based on the various secrets he had learned from the Tarot Club. Yes, that should be the case. Colin fell silent. Even his act of wiping his sword slowed down. After a few seconds, he put down the items in his hand and took 2 steps forward. Those who participated in the conspiracy are still active on the other side of the sea. After a moment of silence, Derek replied in deliberation, "Mostly. But not too much." Colin Iliad nodded, indicating that he had nothing else to ask. Derek hurriedly said, "Chief, I obtained the incomplete formula of the Silver Night Potion, including the supplementary ingredients and the advancement ritual during Light Color Merskogen's death." When he said this, Derek knew that his lie sounded overly fake. It could be seen through right away because he didn't even dare to open his eyes back then. However, he just couldn't think of a better excuse. If Mr. Hanged Man were here, he would definitely have a better solution. Just as this thought came to his mind, he heard the chief speak slowly. "Very good, what is it?" Derek was stunned for a second, before he hurriedly recounted the corresponding ritual and supplementary ingredients. Colin listened quietly and let out a long sigh. "You have contributed greatly this time. This is extremely important to the City of Silver. In the future, our limit will be Sequence 3 and not Sequence 4. Up to a certain range, the risk of the expedition teams will be greatly reduced." Why will the risk encountered by the expedition teams be reduced when the upper limit is Sequence 3 within a certain range? As Derek was happy that he had made such a contribution, he couldn't understand the chief's words. However, he knew that this was something he didn't have the right to understand. He planned on asking around at the tarot gathering later. He then bade farewell and opened the door. Derek, Colin Iliad suddenly called out to him. Derek turned his head in puzzlement and found that the chief's expression was rather solemn. Colin fell silent for a while before shaking his head. "Be careful of Levia." "Yes, Your Excellency," Derek replied from the bottom of his heart. Backland Northborough. Hazel took a carriage back to the city from Moose Manor, and she was preparing to meet Miss Audrey at the Lone Charity Bursary Foundation to discuss matters regarding donations and help. After many interactions, she had a very good impression of this noble lady. She didn't feel pressured when beside her, and the strange emotions accumulated in her heart had mostly dissipated. She gradually recovered more of her forgotten memories. "I should have a teacher. What exactly happened that day? Every time I think about it, I tremble all over." Hazel cast her gaze out the window, feeling a little depressed. Her carriage was driving past the vicinity of Bauckland Street. At this moment, a person dressed in the clothes of a mailman rode his bicycle horizontally across the carriage, looking rather relaxed. Hazel casually sized him up and saw a monocle on his right eye.